So new details are emerging about how Donald Trump is waging a secret court battle trying to stop people from incriminating him. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So it looks like Donald Trump has been waging a secret court battle trying to prevent witnesses from providing the grand jury with incriminating testimony about him. Here's the new reporting from CNN. Headline: Trump's secret court fight to stop grand jury from getting information from his inner circle. And that article begins: Former President Donald Trump's attorneys are fighting a secret court battle to block a federal grand jury from gathering information from an expanding circle of close Trump aides about his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, people briefed on the matter told CNN. The high-stakes legal dispute, which included the appearance of 3 attorneys representing Trump at the Washington, D.C. federal courthouse on Thursday afternoon, is the most aggressive step taken by the former president to assert executive and attorney-client privileges in order to prevent some witnesses from sharing information in the criminal investigation events surrounding January 6, 2021. The court fight over privilege, which has not been previously reported and is under seal, is a turning point for Trump's post-presidency legal woes. Okay, friends, let's unpack this one by the numbers. 1, 2, 3. 1. Is it a surprise that this court battle is being waged in private, in secret, behind closed doors? The answer is no. Grand jury matters are secret by law. So here is how this is playing out in those closed courtrooms. First, the witnesses will appear in the grand jury. They will answer some questions, but they will refuse to answer other questions, invoking a privilege, either executive privilege or attorney-client privilege. And then the battle moves from the grand jury room over to the closed courtroom of Chief Judge Beryl Howell. This case is being heard in the courts of Washington, D.C. So it is the Chief Judge of the D.C. Federal District Court, Judge Beryl Howell, who will then litigate the issue of whether the witnesses should be compelled to testify because the privilege yields, the executive privilege yields, or the attorney-client privilege yields for some reason, or whether they shouldn't be compelled to testify. And let me tell you, friends, Judge Beryl Howell doesn't play. She's going to get this litigation right. That takes us to step number 2. Will Donald Trump succeed in shutting down the witnesses, in preventing the witnesses from providing the grand jury with incriminating information about him, Donald Trump? Donald Trump will fail. You know why Donald Trump will fail? Well, for one reason, there's this little Supreme Court precedent called the United States versus Richard Nixon. And here is, boiled down to its essence, what the Nixon case held. Is the president's right to safeguard certain information using his executive privilege, confidentiality power, entirely immune from judicial review? And the answer is no. The court held, the Supreme Court, a unanimous Supreme Court, held that neither the doctrine of separation of powers nor the generalized need for confidentiality of high-level communications, that would be the executive privilege, without more, can sustain an absolute, unqualified presidential privilege. The court granted that there was a limited executive privilege in areas of military or diplomatic affairs, but gave preference to the fundamental demands of due process of law in the fair administration of justice. Therefore, the president must obey the subpoena and produce the tapes and documents, and Nixon resigned shortly after the release of those tapes. So let's translate that into English and apply it to the present day. The president can't invoke executive privilege to try to bury incriminating information, whether tapes or documents or testimony. And in fact, it is more important that the due administration of justice be served, and frankly, that fraud and criminal conduct be exposed, than that the president gets to invoke executive privilege and keep all of that stuff under wraps. So will those witnesses ultimately be compelled to testify by Chief Judge Beryl Howell? The answer is almost certainly yes. So that brings us to number 3. What happens next? After Chief Judge Beryl Howell rejects Trump's claim that these witnesses should not be permitted to give testimony that would incriminate Donald Trump, you know what happens next. Trump appeals to the D.C. Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, and he loses there, in my opinion. And then, of course, he will try to appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, if the Supreme Court does the right thing, they will not accept this case for review because it was settled long ago, decades ago, in the Nixon case. But maybe they do accept it for review. Here's some good news, friends. If we again look to the litigation over Richard Nixon's tapes to see how long a case might take to work its way from witnesses being compelled to testify to the Supreme Court resolving the case, keep this in mind. In 1974, the subpoena for Richard Nixon's tapes was served by the federal prosecutors in April of 74. 4 months later, July of 74, the Supreme Court unanimously rejected Richard Nixon's attempts to keep those tapes buried. They ordered that the tapes be turned over. And of course, Richard Nixon was exposed for, yes, the crook he was, and he resigned. 4 months from subpoena to unanimous Supreme Court decision. So this can be done promptly, expeditiously, quickly even. And I think we can look to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals and the special master litigation that's ongoing, concerning the classified documents Donald Trump stole from the White House and unlawfully concealed at Mar-a-Lago, because that litigation has been churning through the federal courts at light speed. Let's hope the same holds true with this secret litigation that has been ongoing, by which Donald Trump is trying to stop witnesses from providing incriminating evidence about him and against him. Because justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.